What's up everyone, Bass Pro Tour angler Mike McClelland here to talk jerkbait. I know a lot of y'all, when you think Mike McClelland and jerkbaits, you're thinking that cold water McStick 110. But you know, we've got a couple other jerkbaits in the SPRO McStick lineup that I rely on a lot of times. Anytime I'm fishing, you know, vegetation, boat docks, laydowns up along the bank, but I need a bait that'll only dive, you know, 3 to 5 foot deep, the McStick 115 is the one I'm going to use. It's that bait that it's more buoyant than the 110. The 110 is more designed to fish in those suspended situations, but the 115 is a bait that you can fish around vegetation like you're seeing here, some milfoil, hydrilla, various things, boat docks, laydowns. It's just my go to the bank, get it done, shallow stick bait. I'm gonna fish this bait a lot more aggressively. I mean, very seldomly am I ever gonna let the bait set, you know, more than a second or two. Anytime I'm fishing boat docks and vegetation and laydowns and stuff like that, this is probably the bait that I'm going to rely on more so than any. Another thing that I really think about when I'm throwing the 115 is probably line and rod and reel. Generally, if I'm throwing a 115, I'm not so much worried about the depth that I'm trying to get with this bait as much as I am trying to keep the bait shallower. So typically I'm going to throw this bait on 16-pound Sunline monofilament, or occasionally I'll throw it on Sunline FC crank. I always stiffen my rod up a little bit too. I want to put more action in that bait. So I'm going to a Falcon Expert Series 7-foot. I would say it's a medium action all-around rod is what we call it. And it just allows me to snap that bait a lot more and put a lot more action into it. Gear ratio on reels is really important too. I'm always going to throw a high-speed gear ratio when I'm fishing this bait. You know, a 6:8 to 1, 7 to 1 gear ratio reel. Bass Pro Shop Johnny Morris reel is one of my favorites. You know, anytime you see me throwing that 110, I'm out offshore. You know, I'm fishing points, I'm fishing channel banks. Generally not throwing around targets that often. You know, sometimes you're throwing it around pole timber or cedar trees or something like that, but generally you're trying to fish for suspended fish. When I throw this 110, and it'll all depend on the time of year, it's gonna vary in the way that I present the bait to fish. It's definitely a bait that I've caught in pretty much all seasons of the year, border to border, coast to coast, and there's times that I'm fishing this bait extremely slow. I mean, letting that bait set for 10, 12, 15 seconds at a time, really waiting for a fish to react to it. But it's still a bait that I can just bring constantly and, you know, trigger fish that are aggressively feeding. But when I've got that opportunity to be fishing around schooling fish or fish that are, you know, feeding on shad heavily, it's just an awesome bait to get the job done. There's one right there. Got him to eat that thing. It's a good brownie. I mean, absolutely smoked it. Another thing about, I mean, rods are so important. I mean, you can see this rod has got a lot of tip, and that's really an important factor when it comes to fighting fish on a jerkbait. You know, you've got those small, super sharp gamakatsu hooks, but you know, if you put too much pressure on them, you can definitely lose a lot of fish that you don't want to lose. Now that right there is a smallmouth to get it done anywhere you go. Come here, dog. Stay down. Come on, baby. Looky there. Looky there. No fish landing violation. SPRO McStick 110, getting it done. Man, those fish are awesome. So just to wrap up my thoughts and techniques when it comes to jerkbait fishing, you know, one of the biggest things that I have to say is a jerkbait is definitely not a seasonal bait like a lot of people really put it up to be. I mean, when we started seeing all this live coverage of anglers, you know, all across the country, you see that people catch them on a jerkbait almost 12 months of the year. I mean, especially depending on what part of the country you're in. So I always used to tell people I really felt like if I lived up north, I can catch fish on a jerkbait from ice out to ice in. I mean, I really feel like it's that effective of a bait. The biggest thing is just making sure you're throwing the appropriate bait for the season of the year you're fishing. If you want to see more cool tricks, tips, and just some really, really cool ideas, be sure and check out MajorLeagueFishing.com.